Engage fluo injectors.
Engaging fluo injectors.
Fluo reactors at 80%, sir.
Fluo containment field is destabilizing.
Emergency fluo containment protocols now. All hands brace for impact.
Brace for impact in 3, 2, 1.
Diggity damn, we're back with another episode of World 1-1 Podcast, and this week, as always, we're asking the all-important question, what else can we fuck up today? Alright, quick tease for the third half of the show. This week, Wes and I are going to be taking a look at Strange New Life, spotting, identifying, classifying, categorizing, not just a new genre, but what might actually classify as a new medium. It's a hybrid medium between games and film. So stick around for that. That's a good one. And if you haven't already, you can and should gently caress the inner thigh of the subscribe and share buttons so that you arouse them, get them nice and wet and slippery so that they spread everywhere. Also, in the links in the show notes down below, jump in, join the conversation in our Discord. We'd love to hear from you. Quick shout out to our awesome sponsor, Imaginary Authors, helping you up your scent game with fragrances for guys, gals, and non-binary pals. All that out of the way.
Choose your fighter!
I am, as always, your host, Roll to the Wall. Joining me this week is my compatriot, Wes Evans.
That's me.
Hey! And we're doing the thing. Look at us. We're doing the thing. We can do the thing. Let's do the thing with...
Oh my gosh!
Video games.
Wes, talk to me. It's been a couple of weeks. We've been missing. We've had conflicting calendar bullshit all over the place. Not just you and me, like fucking everybody. Holy shit. Like we've been missing for a couple of weeks, and it's made me sad. What you been playing?
So I'm kind of glad that if we were gonna be missing a couple of weeks, it was the weeks I was just this busy, because I really only have one game I've played enough worth talking about, and that is the Thousand Year Door remake.
Hey!
Yep.
Do tell, what do you think?
So I didn't have a GameCube growing up, so I didn't know what made the Thousand Year Door so special. And every Paper Mario fan is going to cringe when I tell them the very first one that I played was Sticker Star. However, every single Paper Mario fan will also be happy to know that I didn't care for it that much. So, but I wanted to give Thousand Year Door a try, see what made all the classic Paper Mario fans like it so much, like the series so much, and I just gotta say, I get it now.
Hey.
I get it now. Because it's great seeing original characters in the Mario universe. It's great seeing different art style. It reminds me of, I know the gameplay is not one-to-one, but the fact that they're RPGs set in the Mario universe, I did play a lot of Bowser's Inside Story back when I was a kid. And it does kind of remind me of that a little bit.
Okay. I don't know, it's always been not weird, just interesting or fascinating to me that the Mario stuff has had like different series runs of various RPGs. Like you've got the Paper Mario stuff, you've got Mario and Luigi. What the fuck was the other one?
Super Mario
RPG. Yeah, and like. You would think that if you were just going to go the RPG route, you'd have like one canonical series of RPGs instead of splitting them off all over the place.
I think part of it is just that with RPGs, story is usually very important, and they wanted Paper Mario. This is my guess. I obviously can't read the minds of the people who made it. There's probably an interview saying why they branched it off somewhere, but I would think that Paper Mario would be more for where you want to introduce original companions and have them be an important part of the story. And Mario and Luigi is kind of like the established brothers. You know, what are they going through? While the villains, of course, are original in both of them.
Right.
I
and
feel like,
Mario and Rabbids.
that's
There's
that's
a
more
whole
of
other
a
fucking.
it's more of a
That's a
tactical
tactics
game than an RPG, but I mean,
I call it a tactics RPG.
it's in there, and that game is surprisingly good. I haven't played the sequel yet, but I got it on sale because I was thinking to myself, okay, well, I can't remember how long I had my Switch, but I don't think I had it for very long at that point. I was like, all right, I'll give this game a go. So let's see, we'll give it a shot, and it's just kid-friendly XCOM without permadeath.
Yeah, no, it's a lot of fucking fun though.
Yeah,
And they put a lot of love into it, and it always kind of made me a little sad how fast it like devalued in terms of, you know, getting price cut. It
Right.
always made it seem like it was just a cheap afterthought. I'm like, no, they made a really good game. Don't discredit it like that. That it's
And
not a
then-
big deal, but that shit bugged me.
part of me wonders if they did that because the sequel, they wanted to try get more people to play the sequel, but I heard the
No, the
sequel
original you
bombed
could
in
get for like
terms of
$20
sales.
within like a year of it coming out.
Wow. I know that's par for the course for Ubisoft games, but still.
Yeah. I don't know. Part of me feels like it should have been treated more like a Nintendo game than a Ubisoft game, but that's just me.
Yeah.
I mean, in all fairness, Mario got top billing over the Rabbids,
Right.
so I don't know. That's just a weird little perception nitpick thing for me.
One
But
thing.
Not the end of the world by any means.
One thing, maybe I'm making the game harder on myself by doing this, but I'm dedicated to using Goombella's tattle on every single enemy type, and I'll tell you, that made the Colosseum a lot harder for those who know the Colosseum level. I think it's chapter 3 in the game where you get Yoshi as your companion. Because Yoshi is your new companion, and so a lot of the fights want you to use him. However, in order to have Goombella use her tattle, first you have to have her out at the beginning, and then you have to use up either yours or your partner's turn to swap out. And when you swap if you use Goombella to swap out, Yoshi can't do anything that turn, but Mario has the significantly broader range of moves he can use.
Yeah.
So did I end up making it harder on myself? Yes.
Was it worth it?
No. Do I still feel good on the inside? Yes.
Well, then it was worth it. So, I know I'm in the minority here, but honestly, my favorite Paper Mario out of the lot was Super Paper Mario on the Wii.
You're not in as small a minority as you think on that. Because even the classic Paper Mario fans who wanted the pure turn-based, at the very least, still appreciated that it felt like a Paper Mario story.
Oh, it felt like a Paper Mario story, and this is probably just my an issue of taste. Is I enjoyed the platforming and the more actiony side of things as opposed to the turn-based. I used to do RPGs and JRPGs when I was a kid and through my teenage years, but after that, I can't seem to stomach them anymore. It's too slow, it's too tedious for me. And it's not to say that they're bad, it's just not my flavor. I can't do it anymore. There's the occasional very rare exception, but not much.
I get what
I
you
mean, it tends to be too that when it comes to turn-based RPGs, the writing always has so much fucking bloat, and it just feels like it's trying to fill my time. I'm like, I have enough shit to fill my time. I don't need you to do so artificially. Respect my time. You know, we've talked about this countless times. You, me, LeGrew, and some of the others. It's like I want a nice, condensed, focused game where I can get in, get the experience, the story, the gameplay, the ideas, and then get out and get on to the next thing. So,
I think you would be good to try Thousand Year Door. It is. I haven't beaten it yet, so I can't confirm myself. From what I've seen on howlongtobeat.com, though, it's between 20 and 30 hours to beat, between 30 and 40 hours to 100%.
That's definitely pushing my my tolerance, but it may not be out of the realm. But Lord knows I've got enough other shit stacked up to play.
That's fair. That just feels like a perfect length for me, like a nice mix of my money, dollar per hour game, and also not overstaying your welcome.
Yeah, dollar per hour for me doesn't do anything.
I think it
But
matters a
that's-
little bit. It's more so like quality hour, I guess would be a better way to put it, but I also don't want to pretend that I don't take that into consideration, right? Like if you
Right.
give me a 2-hour video game and expect me to spend $70 on it, well, those better be the 2 best hours of my life. You get what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Right, and you're connecting back to something I've talked about a few times over the years, and that's, my review system. And I don't write but when I'm looking at a game and going, how would I score this? How would I rate this? The traditional review system is antiquated and frankly just useless to me. Like, throw that shit out the window. Don't give me a fucking number score, out of 10 or 100 or 5 or whatever. That shit, get rid of it. Review score for me, dollar value. And there's a very, very old episode, and I'll dig it up and stick it I'll stick a link in the show notes even. But the concept for me is finish the game, review it. How much is this game worth to me? Like, what did I get out of it? At what price point does this game feel like it's worth that price of entry? And so there's no cap on it, which means the concept of a perfect score goes out the window. I can look at something like Dead Cells and go, this is a game that's easily worth $50 to me. I've gotten so much out of it, and it's a game with a $25, $30 price tag. It's worth more than you pay for it. On the flip side, too, where that really comes in handy is, a game comes out at, say, $60, and it gets a review on IGN that it's maybe a 6.5 out of 10. Okay, now 4 years down the road, that game has gotten a price cut to $40. Is it still really a 6.5 out of 10, or is it worth the $40? So if that game had come out at $60 and been scored at $40, I wouldn't buy it at $60. But if it came down to $40, I'd pull the trigger and go, now I feel like I'm getting my money's worth. This is the right time to buy. This is what this is worth. This is how good this game is. It's $40 good.
And then you also, I feel like that could theoretically run into problems for smaller games. Like, I'm thinking Vampire Survivors. I probably wouldn't have spent much more than $5, maybe 10 on it, right?
Honestly,
Is
I've
that-
gotten at least 15, maybe $20 worth out of Vampire Survivors. Like, it's small and simple and condensed, but it has that replay that keeps you coming back, that gives you that value.
Right.
But again, you also run into the thing with anything in reviews, no matter what the scale is it's subjective based on the reviewer.
Right. And that also being said, like, if that's the worst flaw I could find in that system, then is it really that bad of a system? Because, like, everyone, at least I hope, knows that the just blank out of 10 score is not a perfect system. Not at
No,
least
it's not
if
even
all
a
you're
good
doing.
one.
Especially if you're just doing a flat blank out of 10. What I would used to do is I would give two separate scores. I would do a blank out of 10 for your time and a blank out of 10 for your money. So for a really, really good short game, it might get a 10 out of 10 for your time. But if they charge you $60 for a 2-hour game, then I'll say, might want to wait till this one goes on heavy discount.
Right, and that's where scoring a game with a price point unifies that sum.
Yeah.
So
I do think that's certainly a better system than a flat out of 10. I just think that maybe if we wanted to make the theoretical perfect review system, we'd have to find a way to make it a little less biased against small and cheap games, you know? Because if a game
I don't think it's biased, but
bias is the wrong word. I'm sorry, but because I don't think
a small
you have.
game
I don't
doesn't
think,
necessarily mean it should be cheap.
right. Bias was the wrong word. Because you don't have anything out against small games, but
Yeah.
it feels like that it might go against them sometimes, if that makes sense.
Right.
Maybe
that's-
what we could do is like, how would we rate this on a percentage of full price? Do I feel like I got money's worth at full price? Would I be willing to spend more than this? Would I be willing to buy it at 50% discount? That might be.
Well, and full price can vary depending on the market that it's releasing into.
That is true.
So, but if you go with a price point and then you convert that from one currency to another, that still holds.
Yep.
So, trust me, I put a lot of thought into that years ago.
Oh, I'm not doubting that. I'm just trying to. I'm not doubting that. I'm not saying I put more thought in than you did. However, here are a few of my thoughts to sprinkle in there to add to it.
Oh yeah, no, I'm not knocking it. It's one of those things too that over the years, every time it's come up, I keep finding like more and more reasons why it's a better system. So, like the idea started and it just kept getting better. But, anyways, so you said Thousand Year Door was it for you this week?
I've played a little bit of Spider-Man 2 again since they released the new costumes in it.
Yeah.
And I'm reminded how much I really, really wish I could skip the Harry missions. Or like the early mission where you're riding in the bike to the school and then you gotta sneak around as Peter right before or right after he got his powers. I'm just like, I want to be Spider-Man and I want to go beat up bad guys and I want to swing around the city. I don't want to crawl on the floor trying to get past teachers.
Right.
Like when the game's
I've
good,
been
it's
reading
good.
some Spider-Man lately.
Yeah. When the game's good, it's really good. It's just sometimes forgets that it's called Spider-Man.
Well, I'll say the out of costume stuff is part of his life too. It's part of the whole act.
I shouldn't deny that. I'll say it's a
So-
whole lot better than the first game was in terms of making you play as side characters. Because
Yeah.
I know MJ is actually kind of fun in Spider-Man 2.
Yeah.
And of course, Miles now has his powers, so you're not just playing awkward teenager who's going up against military and will die if he gets caught instantly.
All right. So, let's see here. I think it's my turn.
I
Unless
believe
you've
it's
got
your
anything
turn.
else to throw on the... Okay. So, pretty much all I've been playing the last couple of weeks because busy as hell and chaos. And I think this may end up turning into a show topic one week at some point down the line. I've been playing a lot of bedtime games. Like, I haven't had the time and space to sit down and sink into something meaty and really progress. Like, I've got a few games that are kind of mid progress, like the Dead Space remake and Control and a few others, but it's not what I've been touching. I haven't had time to really sink into that. What I have had time for is going to bed, I need to get my brain to wind down and shut off so I can go to sleep, and bedtime games. And it's becoming its own little mini classification for me. There are some that just work well for that, and I've talked about this. Games like Balatro, Loop Hero, Vampire Survivors actually even works well for me in that department. Those for me are bedtime games, and those are ones that I can kind of fall into a very easy, very comfortable rhythm that needs some attention, but not enough to keep me awake necessarily, but like in the right way. It's not that it's boring, it's just very rhythmic and soothing. And you fall into this nice, comfortable groove, and it just kind of lulls you into relaxation. And then eventually, your brain goes, I can't stay awake and focus enough anymore to keep playing. It's time for bed. And these are games that if I'm playing in the middle of the day at full attention, I can totally fucking get into and rock that rhythm and spend hours on without a second thought. But at bedtime, it's like that perfect little hit of melatonin. It's just that right groove. It's like for those of us that need the TV on to fall asleep at night, but you need something that's just the right thing. It's not something that you have to pay a lot of attention to because you already know it, but it's not so boring that you don't fucking care and you're uninterested. You've got to be interested, but not so it can't be so demanding on your attention that it will keep you up. It's that perfect little thread the needle, and those are the ones that do it for me. So, a couple of runs of Balatro before bed. I will absolutely pass out playing Loop Hero in all the right ways. It's just it's a very calming, I can just let the game do the game thing and have some minimal interaction with it, just enough to kind of give me something to fidget with a little bit, but not get my adrenaline pumping and demand my attention. And those have been really, really great. And I'm really starting to think that maybe we should totally do an episode on bedtime games. What makes a great bedtime game? What, we kind of build a list and be like, hey, these are great for helping you sleep at night. And it's not to say that they're boring. They're great games. They just have that right vibe.
I think I would really like to have that discussion with you one day, because I feel like my list is going to be completely different from yours, especially because, for me at least, Balatro and Vampire Survivors, though the flashing lights and colors and noises of those games is going to keep me awake. 100%.
I could see that with Vampire Survivors. I would say less with Balatro. Balatro has that super chill vibe all the way through, I think.
I feel like I could fall asleep listening to Balatro music, though. That I could absolutely do.
Between Balatro's music, the whole very retro 80s, 90s, tube TV, scan lines, muted colors, that whole thing. And even the sound effects are all just very low and calm, and it hits all the right grooves for me.
Well, that's one way to find out we have our game set to different settings.
Apparently, shit.
Yeah, I have mine at max speed, heavy screen shake, all of that jazz.
I just left all mine on default, and it was so comfortable.
It's still a good game either way. I just
it
like mine.
is.
I just like it. It makes the big number go burr part of my brain get scratched just a little harder when the screen shake comes on.
All right, try this. Try this in the next couple of days. Kick Balatro back to default settings. Play it at bedtime. See how it makes you feel. I'm curious if that makes a difference for you.
Worth a shot. I'll see if I can remember to do that.
Welcome to the scientific method. Step 1, fuck around. Step 2, find out.
Hey, make sure you write it down, because if other people can't reproduce your results, then you fucked around for nothing.
Yep, this is true. Well, not necessarily, because at least you will have found out.
That's true, but science is the ability to reproduce it.
Mm-hmm. This is true. But that's what I've been playing. A lot of Balatro, Loop Hero, Vampire Survivors, that kind of thing. It's been really nice. I'm like, you know what? I can get a run or two in, and I will fucking fall asleep with the controller in my hand. And that's kind of nice. So, all right. So let's wrap that up there. And before we get to the break, quick shout out to our awesome sponsor, Imaginary Authors, helping you up your scent game with fragrances for guys, gals, and non-binary pals. And it's not just colognes and perfumes. You should absolutely also get your hands on their perfumed candles and oils, as well as the bar soaps. God, I love the bar soaps. I've had to take entirely too many showers this week because it's been hot and sticky and gross. Plus, there's also been working on the car and working out in the yard and just trying to clean the house, and just like twice a day I feel absolutely disgusting. I'm like, I'm gonna go take a fucking shower. And let me tell you, the City on Fire bar soap, still like the best fucking clean I've felt in a long time with the soap. And then I come out with the Smell Good, because City on Fire is kind of like my go-to default fragrance from Imaginary Authors. But I've got a couple of others that I keep in rotation, depending on my mood and maybe even who I'm hanging out with too, or what I'm doing. The Bull's Blood is really cool. It's got a very like patchouli forward fragrance. It's really got a dry heat summer vibe to it. Memoirs of a Trespasser is great. Memoirs of a Trespasser is like City on Fire, but just mellowed out just a little bit. It's absolutely wonderful. Language of Glaciers is awesome. It's got that great like daytime clean, fresh, cool fragrance to it. So much good stuff. And if you can't decide, you can go build your own little pack of sample sizes and check out a bunch. You totally should. So go hit the link in the show notes, Imaginary Authors. Hit that link. Helps them, helps us, helps you. And that's a great place for us to take a quick pause for the break. And we're back with the third half of the show. This week we're taking a dive down the warp pipe.
Oh, wow. Love these pipes.
And we're asking the question, are we witnessing the birth, the genesis of a new hybrid medium? Hanging out with me today, diving into this one, going in blind, is my home slice Wes Evans.
Yo, for those of you who paid attention a couple weeks ago, you might notice that I'm in a slightly different room, even though we said we were going to be recording them back to back. Schedules are funny like that.
Podcast time travel warp magic. I mean, in all fairness, shout out to A Dream Given Form. Several months ago, podcast time travel magic side story, for just a second, because it's funny. I recorded a couple episodes with them, and the first episode I recorded was going to be like 2 episodes into their season 2, but then the second episode I recorded was the Roundtable season 1 wrap up. So it ended up, the first recording was the last thing that was going out with me in it, and then the last thing recorded was the first thing going up. So there were jokes to be made about wibbly wobbly timey wimey bullshit in podcast world. So, anyways,
is it safe to blink at least?
Probably. Most podcasts are an audio medium. I think you're okay.
Okay.
But so this topic occurred to me on the back of a couple of games and some conversations that we've had over the last month or two here, and
Wes, you've kind of been the only one that's been part of all of those conversations. There have been some others that have been in and out of them, but it got me thinking. On the back of us going through and playing Return to Grace and Hellblade 2, and then I did some kind of retrospecting, looking back at Hellblade 1, and I was already kind of getting there with this thought process with Return to Grace already, and Hellblade 2 just kind of cemented it for me. But I think we are looking at the genesis of a new hybrid medium, something that sits in between video games and movies. And this thought started with Return to Grace, because I remember saying something pretty much to the effect of Return to Grace is kind of on the furthest edge of a walking simulator before you tip into being a video game. And I think Hellblade 2 especially, is just on the other side of that line, where it's on the furthest edge of being a video game before it tips into being a walking simulator. And I think that little border area, that stripe, is something not entirely one or the other, but in fact its own hybrid thing. Because on the one side you've got Return to Grace, where it maybe could have gotten away with being done as like a film, but the element of interactivity there allows for you, the player viewer, to take it at your speed, your pace, where they simply lay it out in front of you and say, ingest this, process this, but do it in your way, in your speed. We are not going to like forcibly hold your head and point it to look at what we want, what we think you should see. We want you to have control over how you take it all in and process it, and we don't want to direct the amount of time that you have to reflect on something that you've seen or that's happened. And now, having finished Hellblade 2, my brain says that this is on the other side of that hardline border that Return to Grace sits on. But I think there's just a swath, and that hardline border is at the center of that swath, and everything inside of that swath might in fact be its own new form of medium here. And I think on top of that, the very conflicted to disappointed reviews on Hellblade 2 have also got me looking at this going, I think we've missed the point, because, and I understandably so, I'm not even mad, I'm just saying I don't think the thought's been taken far enough here, is that Hellblade is being reviewed as a video game, and I don't think it's really exactly entirely that. And it needs to be looked at and reviewed through a different lens that better reflects what it really is. And I think it's in this camp with Return to Grace, and probably some others that I haven't even thought about or seen or played yet, but I'm willing to bet you that if we started actively looking for it, we could probably find a large number of games that sit in that corridor there of barely this and almost that, I think that we need to, one, recognize that formally, and then two, figure out if we're gonna, continue to go down the road of reviews, which, considering we're kind of talking about something that almost straddles, that kind of straddles movies and video games, what criteria are we to judge that by? Because I think trying to judge it by the criteria of a video game or a walking sim, which at this point I almost don't know if we should call walking sims video games either. I think walking sims are walking sims, and they're played on video game hardware. So
I wonder.
I'm gonna make a sock out of that cat, I swear to God. But I wanted to bring this to you because you're the only one at this point that I know has played Return to Grace, Hellblade, and Hellblade 2.
Right.
And we've started kind of talking about this.
I've kind of been thinking, like, as you were talking about that, going in blind, whether or not we're in the genesis of it kind of depends on how early you need to define genesis. Kind of like, for example, if we're going to use, say, rock and roll metaphor, right? If Hellblade 2, Return to Grace, and games like that are, say, the Little Richards and the Chuck Berrys, I would argue some of those bigger AAA games that are linearly focused of long walk corridors for story, combat, long walk for story, combat, I would argue that's kind of like the blues music, the Robert Johnsons and the B.B. Kings. Like, we're not there yet. We haven't made rock music yet. But the foundation of what's going to become it is kind of there.
Right. And maybe you're right. Maybe we're watching the groundwork being laid. So, but I'm on board with that. And we might be somewhere between the groundwork being laid and the genesis. Though that does also beg the question. And you've raised a deeper point here that I like, is that this raises the question of, are we watching the groundwork being laid, or has the groundwork been laid, and we're now witnessing the first true entries into this medium with games like Hellblade 2 and Return to Grace? And now we are at a point where it exists and it needs to be formally recognized and identified. Because, and I think maybe groundwork being laid might actually be the first Hellblade, as well as video games, walking sims, and film, because I think that really plays a part here. So this is almost a three-way hybrid.
Could the argument be made, maybe not so much the foundation being laid, but part of the blueprints being drawn up? If we're going to include mediums that aren't part of the medium you think about, could we talk about maybe, say, Netflix's Bandersnatch? Because normally, when you watch something, especially on Netflix, they have it fully automated. It's like, we know you guys don't want to watch the ads. We know that you are tired. You worked 40 hours this week. Here is our show. Just go ahead and watch it. We'll play everything for you, right? Mm-hmm. And then here they are having this thing. It's a choose your own adventure, and you actually have to physically interact with it. It's very simple. You just hit which choice you want to do. Mm-hmm. But that's something that's done on a traditional TV streaming platform. Yeah. And there are other things they've done. They've got Trivia Quest on there as well. And there's one, I can't remember, I think it's called Cat Burglar. It's kind of like a Wile E. Coyote style cartoon, where if you get the questions wrong, everything blows up in his face, kind of like the Acme products do.
There a couple more that I think fall into this category, and two of them are on the other side of the line here. One, Netflix has another series that's actually It's like an 8-episode limited series, and I'm blanking on the name. I'll Google it in a minute. But 8 episodes. The first 7 episodes are made to be watched in whatever order you want. The only episode that has a fixed position in the viewing order is the final episode.
Well, Kaleidoscope. That's what.
That's
you're
it.
talking
Thank
about.
you. Yeah, it's fucking neat. Like, that's a really cool narrative experiment here, and you know, again, that's on the TV film side of this line. On the video game side of that line, we've got stuff like Night Shift and The Complex that are choose your own adventure movies like Bandersnatch, but instead of going up on Netflix, they popped up on, you know, console and PC. But they're functionally the same thing.
What about games that focus a lot on, say, FMV? That's full motion video, right? Is that what the FMV stands for? Yeah.
Full
So
motion
like
video.
games like Her Story, or is it Immortal or Immortality? It's one of those.
I think it's Immortal.
Immortal.
But I know what you're talking about.
But those are like the mystery games where you're going through real life footage recorded and you're trying to puzzle out the story of what's going on.
That might be on the outskirt of this, because I do think of Her Story and Immortal. I think you're right. It might be Immortality, but either way, I think that things like those lay more firmly in the video game camp. It feels like there's more. This is a rare case where I can't even entirely put my thumb on it.
I feel like they belong in the conversation, though. Like
They do.
I
think those are ones that lay the groundwork, the foundation, and then stuff like Bandersnatch and Complex and Night Shift are the results of that groundwork.
To anyone who's taken a music appreciation class, those games are to the Romantic era to what Beethoven was, if that makes sense.
Holy shit, we got classy up in this bitch.
Oh yeah, I took a whole music appreciation class. I know what that reference is.
But yeah, like you said, I think that we are seeing something new being born here. And I think I'm moving past being upset about it or mad about it, and I'm getting to the point maybe where I'm kind of just sad for it that the for lack of a better term yet, because I haven't figured out what to call this, is that the games that fall under this heading, under this category, aren't getting a fair shake because we're applying the wrong standard to it, but we haven't figured out what the right standard is yet. Nobody's sat down and looked at it. And maybe that's something that we could do in a follow-up. That'd be kind of fucking interesting too. And I think you and I would probably have to spend some more time thinking about it, and then get a few more of the gang to finish going through the Hellblades and the Return to Graces and the such. But that said, that sadness, I think, is spurring a call to action here that says that it's time this becomes formally recognized. It's in its early days, but it is here. And if we don't get on board with it in terms of understanding it, acknowledging it, and looking at it through the correct lens, then we may do irreparable harm to the future of it. And that would be a shame. Because I think there's something really, really good here. And this is beginning to kind of reframe my internal thought that I've had for a while now of this frustration with gaming's quest to be cinematic. And because I look at a lot of it and I go, if you want to be cinematic so bad, just make a fucking movie. And if your game could have just been a fucking movie, why didn't you just make the damn movie? It didn't need to be a game. You clearly wanted to make a movie. Just go make the movie. Probably would have been less expensive too, in a lot of cases. Because you see a lot of that with AAA stuff, where it's the big dumb action game. And I'm going to take things like Uncharted as an example here, where it's so determined to be cinematic that you could, it almost felt like they really would have rather just made a movie. And developing thought in real
I
time.
was about to say, you do know they in fact did make a movie,
I
right?
I know, and that's part of what spurred this thought. Because I'm like, and they did, and it wasn't great, but this makes me wonder if the reason that a lot of studios do this kind of shit is because they actually want to make a movie, but they don't have the chops to make a good movie. And so video games are basically getting stuck with movie pitch rejects that they know wouldn't have been good enough to cut it as a movie, but they're like, we could sell this as a video game. And most everybody is too oblivious to know what's going on here and is going to eat up this schlock instead of us demanding better.
Less cynical towards developers, but slightly more cynical towards executives. I would argue that I wonder if it has to do with the fact that the video game industry is the largest entertainment media in terms of revenue.
Yeah.
By far, like outgrossing music and movies combined.
I know, it's kind of bonkers.
And so I wonder if the executives are thinking to themselves, well, yeah, this could make a good movie if we really, really wanted to, but let's instead make it a video game. And then, because the movie is derivative of the video game, it just, nothing ever lives up to that.
Mm-hmm.
And now, I'm going to be a little mean, and I feel almost bad about this because I'm being mean towards an indie developer. I don't know what the name of the guy or the studio who does it, but one game I felt that to me was honestly so boring, I almost felt like whoever made it was upset that he had to make it as a video game, was Kentucky Route Zero.
Made it out of spite.
Like, he felt like he had a story to tell, but he was upset that he couldn't make it a book or a graphic novel or anything like that. Because, by God, I'm not saying the story is bad, but the gameplay is so boring. I finished the first chapter and I was like, there is no way I'm going to enjoy chapters 2 through 5.
I'm gonna shamefully admit I actually haven't touched Kentucky Route Zero yet, and thank you for reminding me, because it was on my list. I wanted to check it out and it kind of fell off my radar. It got pushed out by other things. And at this point, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that I'm now expecting it to be good. I have at least your opinion, but I have a renewed interest or a new reason for going in from what you're saying, and I'm wondering if this is another one that maybe falls into the category that we're talking about here, where it wouldn't really work as full tilt one or the other, but by combining them, you can find a new way to deliver what neither of the others by themselves could.
I would argue,
and that's where it needs to be.
Now, maybe this is just the little voice in my head that says, no, Wesley, you're never wrong. Don't ever admit you might be making a mistake here. But even though I found Hellblade 2's first chapter to be its worst chapter, I still could see the pieces of a great game there, right?
Yeah.
I didn't play it with headphones on. Dear God, do I wish
didn't
I
either,
did.
actually.
Because I played chapters 2 through 5 with headphones on, and my God, was that so much better. But I could tell that the voices in your head played an interesting part of it. When the combat was there, you could tell, even though it was simple, it still felt tense.
Yeah.
And when the graphical fidelity, I've been saying for years, graphics don't matter that much, or they matter to the point where, you can tell what's going on at the very least, but this game looks so good, you gotta try it. It honestly is a game that, if you have Game Pass, just try it for the visuals at the bare minimum, right? Now, granted,
I feel like the only other game that comes anywhere close to touching at least the visual achievement that is Hellblade 2 would be Gran Turismo. Gran Turismo was one of the most insanely visually processed and produced games out there. And like Gran Turismo has always kind of set the bar. But I think Hellblade 2 has set the new bar. And part of me wonders if we're going to see anybody clear that bar before another Gran Turismo comes out.
Never say never, especially with technology. I don't think it's going to be this console generation. Don't think.
Yeah.
Do not quote me on this happening. This is I'm mostly sure it won't, but not confident enough I would bet the house.
Right. I'd bet good money, but it's not a sure bet.
Right.
So, but it's probably a pretty comfortable bet.
But yeah, so similar to how I said I could see the pieces of a good game with Hellblade 2's first chapter, even if I still thought that was its weakest one by far. Yeah. I did not find any pieces of a good game in Kentucky Route Zero. I'm going to be honest. Other than the story was kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm. And like I said, it makes me want to go check this out now through a different lens of maybe just the fact that the level of interactivity and directorial control, in a sense, is a required component to make Kentucky Route Zero work. And so rather than going in judging it by the merits and the metrics of what we expect from a video game, looking at it through this new identified lens might shape my opinion differently.
Damn, you're making me actually say maybe I should give it a second try.
It could be one of the, and I'm not even trying to sway you.
Right.
I'm just saying this could be one of those things where it's not a good game, but that's because it's not a game. And if we figure out what it is, then we can scale it and evaluate it appropriately and correctly. My cheeseburger I had for dinner tonight is not a good pizza.
But it's a good cheeseburger.
There you go. So the question is, have we started eating cheeseburgers, but we're judging them to the standard of a pizza?
Are we pizzaing when we should be French frying?
We might be.
We might be.
And I back to the whole this just kind of makes me sad for it thing, is that it makes me sad that frustrated that for everybody that's been reviewing Hellblade going, it's gorgeous, but it's a terrible game. I'm like, maybe you're half right, but don't stop there. Keep going. Ask the next question. And it stuns me that nobody else is. I'm like, I don't ever purport to be the smartest guy. That's not true. Yes, I do. But I'm like, holy shit, I'm not the one that's got a living wage and a career out of this. You guys should have gotten to this well before I did. And they didn't. And I'm like, it's sad. That's sad. So to brighten the mood a little, because that got a little somber for a second there. But if this is what we think it is, and this is always the fun part for me, what do we call it?
I had heard some people refer to, say, walking simulators that were actually good as interactive narratives rather than walking simulators. It feels like a slightly awkward name, but I think it's a good start.
That's not bad, honestly. Interactive narrative is right. Part of me thinks too is that there's even though, you know, it's a finished product that had a director, part of me feels like our role in this is not just as whatever character that we're playing as, but also as a director of the story, in the sense that we are setting and controlling the pacing. We are framing the shots and dictating the action. And so there's an element of director here as well. And I think that I don't know if it is or isn't, but I think it maybe is important enough to acknowledge in whatever this ends up being called. But honestly, I can't come to anything better than an interactive narrative. And it's a little clinical, but it's not wrong. I think it works. The next step is to start, and this I think is going to be would probably be a separate episode down the line when we can get a few more in the conversation here, because I think it needs a larger group discussing it, just for the additional perspectives and viewpoints. But figuring out how do we, what's the right framework to review these by, to judge these against, as to whether or not they are good or not, or successful or not. I've got some initial thoughts, but I think we'll save that for when we can put a part two to this.
Yeah, because I had a few initial thoughts too. I'm not don't know if I have a final answer. I kind of want to say it just because, like, we can go a little deeper on it, but for lack of a better way to describe it, if it gets you either thinking or gets you feeling very strongly, I feel like it has succeeded.
That's probably a piece of it. I don't know. I think I'm going to have to spend some more time marinating on this. I like this thought, though. I'm excited to come back to this.
Yeah.
So,
I would argue the fact that we're having this discussion kind of in a way means that Hellblade 2 succeeded in that sense.
Yeah. It I think it did something successfully that it didn't mean to do, but it's important that it did. And that was to be the final marker that says, look at me for what I am. I'm not that, and I'm not that. You now have to figure out what that is. Like, it was the last example we needed to be able to go, this isn't a fluke. This is a thing. So, any final thoughts you want to toss in? We'll close this out. This is a good one.
It is. Next week, we'll talk about the difference between visual novels and graphic novels.
Oh, there's some in-betweens there too. You've got like the animated comics and things.
Oh, yeah.
Broken Saints was one I really liked. Anyways, but yeah. Oh God, this whole topic has made me. This whole conversation has just made me real happy. I'm sorry, I'm in my own head. I'm in the feel goods right now. Jesus.
Huh. Embrace it.
I am. Oh. I feel like it's been a minute since we've hit a note like this. I'm really pleased. I am super excited to come back to this with a few more of the gang and really, start not dissecting, but learning, defining what makes an interactive narrative what it is, and how to identify it and how to judge it appropriately. But let's wrap it up. I want to say thank you to everybody that tuned in and listened this week. Thank you to my compatriot Wes. Big shout out. Thank you to our awesome sponsor, Imaginary Authors, helping you up your scent game with fragrances for guys, gals, and non-binary pals. Link to them in the show notes down below. Also in the show notes, link to the Discord. Jump in. If this has got you thinking at all, jump into the Discord. We want to hear your feedback on this. The more voices on this topic, the better. This is the kind of thing that needs perspectives and viewpoints from every direction to really be able to fully observe this. So jump into the Discord, come chat with us. So we absolutely want to hear your thoughts, and some of those thoughts may end up affecting and influencing the part 2 to this when we get to do that. So other than that, I think we're done. Say goodnight, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
You've been tuned to the World 1-1 podcast, powered by the World 1-1 Podcast Network. Press start to engage your mind. Peace!